The topic today is, does cold calling still work? And I thought it would be a good idea to do a webinar on this because I get the question all the time, does this stuff really still work? You see a lot of stuff out being published on cold calling is dead. So let's break it down and we'll look at it from both sides. You probably know what angle we're going to come at it from, and the end result is that it does still work, and these are some things you can do to make it work for you. That's eventually where we'll end up. But let's break it down and go through it. I think you'll find some tips and new insight along the way. We're going to start out with a golf metaphor, and I'm kind of throwing a warning out at you because I'm going to get pretty deep into the metaphor, but I want you to bear with me because it hopefully will make sense why I'm going along those lines. Also, I'm fully aware that there might be plenty of people on the phone that don't know anything about golf. I'm going to explain the metaphor as though you don't need any knowledge or interest in golf to understand the direction we're going. But let's start out and talk about the different clubs in a bag of golf clubs. I have here some of the main clubs, not every club, but you have a driver and you have at the other end you have your putter. And again, I know that if you've never played golf, that might not mean anything to you. So to explain a little bit about those different clubs, the difference in each club is that each club hits the ball a different amount of distance. And on one end of the spectrum, you have clubs like your driver that hit the ball very far. So you have a lot of distance capability, but the accuracy is very small. So if you need the ball to land or end up in a very small area, the driver is not going to be the best club, even if you are a very proficient golfer, because the strength of the club is the distance. And as you go through these different clubs, you start to move along a spectrum. And at the other end of the spectrum is the putter, which is sort of the opposite of the driver. Its strength is the accuracy. So if you need the ball to end up in a very small area, such as a round hole in the ground, the putter is going to be the most accurate thing to do, but the weakness is the distance. So in order to play a round of golf, which would be a long distance of yardage for you to cover and a lot of different holes to complete, you would want to use a mixture of all these clubs in different situations. Now, I bring that up because we're here to talk about if cold calling works. And so you kind of have a similar bag of tools, similar to a bag of golf clubs. And so just to go through some of these, you have at the top end of the spectrum is search engine optimization, SEO, which is basically driving traffic to your website. And then going down the list of tools, content marketing, social media marketing, email marketing, pay-per-click advertising, social media prospecting, events and networking, email prospecting, phone prospecting down there at the bottom. Now, I do want to point out that I put phone prospecting there as actually a replacement for the label of cold calling. And that's actually one suggestion that I'd make just sort of out of the gate is, let's stop talking about cold calling. And I also cringe when I hear the word telemarketing. Let's call it phone prospecting. Because what we're trying to do is we're ultimately trying to communicate with prospects and customers, and we have a lot of different tools to use to communicate to them. Those tools are listed out here, and some of them are web and social media and email. So let's label it as phone prospecting because we're using the phone to connect with our prospect along with using other stuff. And forget about cold calling, because sometimes we call someone and maybe it's not cold because we've warmed them up in some way or another. So let's not worry about whether it's warm calling or cold calling. It's just phone prospecting. And so you have this mixture here. Now, like I said, I have a lot of clients that will come to me and they'll ask, does cold calling work? And the thing is that they want to their strategy is to only use cold calling. And what I will often say to them is, it works, but I would not only do cold calling or phone prospecting. You want to do other stuff. These tools actually line up exactly with the golf clubs in that SEO and search engine optimization is like your driver in terms of it's going to get you the longest distance, and it's not distance in yards, it's actually the reach in people. So if you do search engine optimization correctly, you can drive a large number of people to your website. But from an accuracy standpoint, you're going to get a very wide range of people. Some of the people don't fit at all, so the accuracy is very limited. But that's going to get a lot of people into your funnel. And as you go through this, let's skip down a few. Email marketing. So email marketing, you start to get a little bit better accuracy, but you still might end up with a bunch of people on your list that aren't qualified or don't fit at all. But you still have a lot of reach in terms of reaching a lot of people very efficiently, and your accuracy is improving, but it's still not incredibly accurate. And then down at the bottom, like the equivalent of the putter, is the phone prospecting. It's extremely accurate in that it's one-to-one communication. You know who you're calling, you know who they are typically, you might have some information about them, and when you talk to them, you have this really accurate, I don't know if accurate is the right word, but this really connected personal conversation. So that's similar to the putter in that you don't hit the ball a long way, but it's very accurate. So phone prospecting, you're not able to reach a whole lot of people out all at once, but the people that you do call or the people that you do talk to, you can have a very accurate, very focused conversation. So just want to make that connection that all these tools follow along the same spectrum. Now I want to point that out because now I want to go back to the golf metaphor and let's look at what a normal round of golf would be in terms of how you might use those golf clubs. So here's that same list, and the numbers here are how many times I might swing and you hit the ball with that golf club. And for like an average to fairly good golfer, they might hit the ball 82 times, and you'll notice they're hitting the putter 25 times. The putter is actually the club that they're hitting the most, but they're also using all these other clubs to get a lot accomplished. And so, and a round of golf for that, let's say, fairly good golfer, it might take 4 hours. And bear with me here. The reason why I point that out is that if you try to cover that same distance and only used a putter, you would have to hit the putter 500 times because you're only hitting the ball a short distance. And because you're hitting the ball so much, it might take you 8 hours what would take you 4 hours when you used your full mix of tools. And then if you look at it at the other extreme, let's say we use all the other clubs but we don't use the putter. So we're using, let's say, our pitching wedge to hit the ball into the hole, and I apologize if I'm getting into too deep of the metaphor, but the point here is that if we don't use the putter, we end up hitting the ball 152 times, so almost double the amount of times that we do with using the full bag of golf clubs, and we're having to work an extra hour. The message here is that if you think about that back to your sales and marketing tools, if we don't do those other things and we only did cold calling, we're going to have to work twice as hard to get the same amount of results. And that's where you end up with this feeling like cold calling isn't working. I'm wasting my time, I'm spinning my wheels, I'm running in place, and that's very understandable. And then you have people on the other end of the spectrum who think that cold calling is a waste of time and is dead, and they try to sell over email and over social media and only do internet marketing and whatnot. And so they're not using their putter. What happens is they're ending up maybe with the same amount of sales, but they're actually having to work twice as hard. And my first sales job, someone told me you don't sell over email. You have to pick up the phone to actually close the sale. You can really be efficient by communicating over email, but at some point you have to pick up the phone. And I think that's a good example here is that, sure, if we only use email and whatnot, we can get there. But at the end of the day, if you're not picking up the phone, you're going to maybe be working twice as hard. The point is that yes, there is a time and place to pick up the phone, and the phone should be part of our mix. It should not be the only thing, and we should not do everything else and then just skip the phone. So that's the message there. I'm done with the golf metaphor. I hope that sort of gave you some things to think about. Let's get back to this mix of tools. And I do recognize that there might be a lot of salespeople watching this. Our clients are a mix. We have business owners, sales managers, and then salespeople. And I do understand if you're a salesperson, you don't have some of these tools in your bag. Because if you're a salesperson, you're not in control of the company website or the content marketing or the email marketing. That's done by somebody else, and it's either working and it's good or it's not. And then what you do have control over is the lower end of that tool set. If you're a business owner, you might be involved and in charge of all of these. So I do recognize that, and what I would say to you is that if you can control the full mix, then that's great. But if you can only control the bottom half, there's still things in terms of the sales tools, and you're a salesperson, there are still some things that you can do to be more efficient. So social media prospecting, that's getting on LinkedIn and doing some stuff, and I'll actually show you some stuff here in a minute that I can point you to. But one of the things that I talk to my clients specifically on events and networking, what I would actually do before cold calling or phone prospecting is get out and network. I think networking is your best lead generation tool in terms of making contacts and referral partners and whatnot. But you know what? Even at the end of the day, when you go out there and you network and you build up your list of contacts, you still want to take those and factor those into your time per week doing phone prospecting. So you might get contacts and leads through events and networking, but at some point you need to call them. So that's an example of using that tool of events and networking in incorporation with phone prospecting to make your phone prospecting better, more efficient, versus I'm just going to call a totally cold list of prospects. Email prospecting, you may, of course, you're probably already using email in your sales efforts, if you think about just sending emails to prospects. Let me actually show you something here real quick. I want to show you an example of, and I'm going to flip over to SalesScripter here. Like I said, you're already using email today, so if I said to you, okay, use both email and the phone, you might say, okay, I know what that means, but let me show you how you can use email in a different way to be more efficient, and that can impact who you call. So first of all, in SalesScripter, we create email templates. So I don't know how familiar you are with this, but the system will create email templates for you, and so these are created by the software. Nothing that I want to get into too much detail here, but what I want to show you is we create all these different email templates, but we actually will create what we call an email thread, which is multiple emails designed to go out to a prospect over a period of time. So that's one thing that you might not be doing today. I know me personally, I get emails. I'll get an email from a prospect that's trying to sell me a product. I don't respond to it. Then they send me an email number 2 that is like and in fact, I got an email this week that it was email number 2 was a forward of email number 1, and the salesperson said, I want to enthusiastically express why my interest in talking with you. That was his addition on to, that's all that he changed on email number 1. So email 1 was selling me the product. Email 2 was him expressing his enthusiastic interest in talking with me. So not a real compelling thing for me. If I didn't respond to email 1, is him telling me how enthusiastic he is going to compel me to respond to email number 2? So I'm getting in a little bit detail there on email prospecting. But the point here, let me back up. The point here is send different messages and have those go out to your prospect over a period of time. By the way, one thing on SalesScripter, we give you these different email threads, and we'll actually schedule those out and send those out over a period of time. So we'll automate that for you. But one of the reasons why I show you that you can send these out through SalesScripter is that we'll actually track the opens and clicks, and that's really important data. And again, I'm going to tie this into making your phone prospecting more efficient, in that this is what we do is we'll give quality points for the prospects that are opening and engaging with your emails. And again, the reason why tools, whether you use SalesScripter or you use something else, the reason why this is important with your phone prospecting is that if I have this data and I'm going to pick up the phone, I can see here who I should be calling. because I want to be calling these people that are opening and clicking on my emails and are engaged versus the ones who aren't. And I can see the ones who aren't, who have 0 or negative quality points, and I'm not going to spend my valuable time calling them. So the point here is, I know I'm showing my own product and might seem a little salesy, but what I'm trying to share with you is that having this data allows me to make better decisions on who to call. And by being more informed on who to call helps me to make phone prospecting work. And that's our topic here today. Does cold calling work? Well, if you use the right tools and you send the right emails, cold calling can work. If you don't do the right tool, don't send the right tools, don't use the full tools in your tool bag, then cold calling is very difficult. That's the mix of tools in our tool bag. Now, one thing I want to point out, and to make cold calling work for you, there's a lot of things that you should change and learn, and there's a lot of information that I have to share with you. And so one thing I'm going to do here today is I'm actually going to redirect you at a lot of different places to other webinar recordings. So the topic that we're going to that I will give you some direct tips on, is phone prospecting. But you have all these other tools in your bag, in your tool bag, and so we have webinar recordings that can help you with those. For content marketing and email marketing, check out building email drip campaigns that convert sales. Now, this is actually a hyperlink in this slide deck. So when you get if you want to actually go directly to that link, you can download this slide deck from our website, and then you'll actually have that link, because I know in the video it's not a link. But now for social media prospecting, we have a webinar on how to effectively use LinkedIn as a sales prospecting tool. For events and networking, how to be an awesome networker, you want to check that one out. For email prospecting, and I started getting a lot of detail when I was talking about those email templates and email strategy. That's actually explained in full detail on how to effectively use email as a prospecting tool. So check that out. And we are here today, we're going to drill into phone prospecting, but there is a webinar that seems to be helping people a lot. It's actually only 27 minutes, but it's how to build a cold call script that works, which is sort of a good summary training video that we have on phone prospecting. So be sure to check that out. But that being said, now let's talk about phone prospecting. And the reality is that even if you are using all those different tools and you're getting a lot of reach and a lot of distance from your website and social media and email marketing, when you do pick up the phone, you do face challenges. And this happens even if you are calling. I showed you those quality points. Even if we had someone with a ton of quality points and we know that they're the person that we should spend our time calling, we do face challenges when it's time to pick up the phone and call that person. And so let me share with you what I think those are. The fact is, actually, let me just say something real quick, is that what we're going to drill into here today, these challenges, these are more related to B2B phone prospecting than B2C. So what we're going to share with you today could be used somewhat with B2C, but it really fits more with B2B. So if you sell B2C, you might want to just keep that in mind, and some of this might not apply. So just a disclaimer there. But when we're calling B2B, the prospects are extremely busy because we know we're calling people at work, right? And especially a lot of the time you're going to be calling at the decision maker level. So these people are guaranteed to be extremely busy. I've seen a decision maker's calendar before, and it's just meeting after meeting after meeting. So a lot of times they're not even at their desk or in their office, and that's the phone number that you're calling them at. They never answer your call, and you think that they're avoiding you, but the reality is that they're in meetings all day long. And so you just got to keep that in mind, and that's a challenge that you face. Another thing is that there's a tremendous amount of competition, and that they get sales calls from a lot of salespeople. These are actually two different things. So you can just assume that there are other salespeople trying to call the same people you're calling, not only people that maybe sell exactly what you sell, but also people that sell something that has nothing to do with what you sell. They're trying to sell to the same person that you are. And in addition to that, It even goes beyond other salespeople, because if you're calling a decision maker, there's also internal people that are trying to get to those people as well, right? So there's people that are trying to sell projects and get approval for projects. So there's a lot of noise, and a lot of that noise is salespeople, but these people are just being contacted all day long, internally and externally, and that's a challenge for us. If we do kind of finally get through all that and we get someone, a prospect on the phone, it's very likely that they are not in buying mode for what we sell when we connect with them. Could be some times where you time it perfectly right, but let's just say you sell some sort, well, you sell some sort of product and your prospect buys that product periodically. The odds are that they're not sitting there thinking, I wish someone would call me, or I wonder what the pricing is on this, or I wonder who some good vendors are for that. They're not thinking that at the exact same time they answer your call. So it's not to say that they can't be sold to, or don't need it, or won't buy it, but they're just not thinking of buying what you sell at the time they grab your call. Think of how that differs, like if you were at a storefront and someone walks in your store. You know that they're in buying mode. When you're doing phone prospecting, you don't have that dynamic. When you do reach a prospect, their guard is going to be at a medium level. And part of the reason is for those 2 points here, the 2 challenges. One is they're extremely busy, and then they're also getting contacted by salespeople every day. So if they do answer the phone and they don't know who you are, their guard is going to be at a medium level. And everything you do and say will either make their guard go up, or will make their guard go down, or it might make their guard just stay where it is. So that's a challenge. Dealing with their guardedness and the buying mode is when we're lucky enough to get them on the phone. The reality is that prospects don't answer their phone a whole lot. Either they're, like I said, they're in meetings all day, or they just let all their calls go to voicemail, or they put prospects in between them and you. And they do that on purpose. They forward their direct phone number to a front desk or to an administrative assistant. So those are the challenges that are there. If this was a more interactive session, I would say, do you guys agree with that? Do you have anything to add to that list? But I'm pretty confident from my own experience that that's a pretty good list of challenges that you all might experience those too. And so that's what we have to deal with. And when someone says cold calling is dead or cold calling doesn't work, well, one thing, they could be looking at that list and say, that's just too tough. That's too difficult, so I'm not going to do it. And that's the choice you have. Is that the thing is that you can't make these challenges go away. There's nothing you can do to make a prospect less busy. There's nothing you can do to force someone to answer their phone. So there's nothing you can do to make these challenges go away. Your choices are, do I not pick up the phone and call people because this is a difficult environment, or are there things I can do to decrease these challenges, to mitigate these challenges, to work around these challenges? And so that's what I'm going to show you here today, is that we're going to go through each of these one at a time. And that's the way I see things. I don't know whether you've gathered this from our other training modules or not, is that, instead of just like trying to pump you up and say, you can do it, you have what's inside you, you got to work when your competition is sleeping, you got to be hungrier than everyone else. I'm not real big on giving you motivation. I assume you're motivated and you want to succeed. So my approach is, let's break it down. Let's see what is standing in your way piece by piece and deal with that piece by piece. If I can give you tips to decrease each of these challenges, in theory, that should make these challenges less. If I make these challenges less for you, then you will be more successful. And I feel fairly confident in that assumption. So that's our approach here today, and let's just go through these one at a time, starting with prospects are extremely busy. We know that they're busy, so what are we going to do to counter that? Well, you know what? We're going to have to call someone a whole lot. Not just call them. We're going to have to email them. We're going to leave them voicemails. Not only are we going to leave them voicemails periodically, we're going to follow up our voicemails with emails. So we're going to just contact this person a lot. And the reason why is because we know they're busy. So if the decision maker is never at their desk and they're in meetings all day, then we're going to have to call them a lot. And so the thing about that is to, first of all, it's starting with an awareness that the prospect is busy and that's why they're not calling us. Because if you don't have that awareness, then you might actually have this sort of insecurity to where you think, I've called this person 4 times, they're not answering my call, they're avoiding me, or they're not interested, so I'm going to move on to someone else. So the reality is that that awareness can tell us to not assume that the prospect is not interested because they're not returning our voicemail and they're not responding to our email. They might not be responding and answering our call because they're extremely busy. And so we just need to keep calling them. And it's not that we're a bad salesperson or we're not doing a good job. These people are busy. So we're going to use a multi-touch approach using different methods of communication, and we're going to use those methods a lot. And so here's a diagram that we call this our call cadence workflow. And I'm not going to go through this here today. I've done that in another sales training webinar that we've done. But this basically has 4 different rounds of calls and emails and voicemails, and there's some logic here that if they don't answer and it's the first call, you send them an email, then you follow up the email with a call, then you leave a voicemail. What I want you to take, if you're just looking at this workflow, is that there's a lot of different attempts before we write this person off as, okay, we've done our part. And even some of these boxes, you might see, okay, there's a lot of different boxes here, but some of the boxes even say call 5 to 10 times, so there's a lot of attempts here that we want to do. We're still dealing with the challenge that we're assuming and we know that our prospects are extremely busy. So what does that mean? If they're busy, then we're communicating with them, then we need to communicate with them in a very concise and powerful message. Let me give you one quick example. So if we're creating an email that we're sending to our prospect, then we need to use a short email versus a long one, because if our prospect is busy, they're more likely to delete an email unread if there's a bunch of text there. And so if we can have a very concise message, then we can improve the odds of our message being looked at versus being instantly deleted. And since our prospects are very busy and it's going to take us maybe some time to get a hold of them, we might want to try to educate them through multiple messages, meaning multiple voicemails, multiple emails, multiple voicemail follow-up emails, and educate them on the improvements we could possibly help them to make, the problems we might be able to help to fix for them, ways we differ from other options out there, the ROI we can deliver them. So again, I'm still going to point you to some other webinars here as we go through these challenges, but right there I was talking about creating a very concise and powerful pitch, and that can help with communicating and connecting with prospects that are extremely busy and just have a very limited amount of attention. And so here's a webinar recording on how to build a strong sales pitch, and so that can help you with creating your messaging that you can use when you call, when you email, when you leave voicemails. Moving on to the next one, and that is that we know that our prospects are getting approached a lot by other salespeople. So what I want you to do is, if your prospect is constantly getting voicemails, emails from people saying, hey, I have this product to sell, I want you to buy my product, and then if you call them and you say, I have this product to sell, I want you to buy my product, call me back. And of course you wouldn't say those exact words, but believe it or not, most salespeople actually sound like that. And so what I want you to do is to try to minimize how much you sound like a salesperson that's trying to sell something. And so you might think, well, but I am a salesperson trying to sell something, so how can I do that? Do I lie and pretend like I'm doing something else? And the answer is no. But there are things you can do to sound more like a business person or more like a consultant or an advisor than a pushy salesperson trying to sell something. I mean, if you think about it, you can legitimately sound like a person that's representing an organization that wants to do business with another organization, and that would involve, at the end of the day, a transaction where something's bought and sold, and you represent all of that, and you're the person that they would work with. That is something different than I'm a product pushing salesperson that wants to talk you into buying something that I want to sell and I want to make money from selling to you. Those are two different things, even knowing at the end of the day that's the exact same. Those two different people hold the same exact position. And so the one that is on the latter side that I shared with you is a product selling salesperson. And these are the people that as soon as they talk to a prospect, they're all about talking about the products they sell, that they're about talking about the company they work for. They're always trying to sell the product. Meaning in every conversation they're trying to sell the product, even if it's a long sales cycle where you don't sell the product in the first conversation, they're still trying to talk the prospect into wanting the product every step of the way. The salesperson does most of the talking when they are doing more of a product selling approach. The pitch centers around explaining what the product does, describing the product, trying to make the prospect interested in the product. And so they're always, again, trying to make the prospect interested. So that's what I would call product selling. I think that probably 90%, if not more, salespeople out there use a product selling approach. What we would want you to do, and this will help you to sound more like a business person, is to have a consultative selling approach. And it really just does the opposite of everything that I just talked about. Instead of talking about the products, talk about the improvements that you can make for the prospect. And that's typically using your product, but focus on the improvements. Talk about helping the prospect to fix their problems and what problems you can fix. And again, that's typically using your product, but it's more focusing on the problems. Ask good questions to see if the prospect has the problems that you can help to fix. So a consultative salesperson is going to ask good questions. And because you're asking good questions, you're going to end up doing most or an equal amount of talking. And the pitch centers around good questions. And again, you're talking about benefits, problems, ROI, and whatnot. So again, we're talking about making phone prospecting more successful. So this is, you're reaching out to prospects and either they're answering your phone and this is what you're doing when you're talking to them, or this can also impact the emails that you send and the voicemail messages that you leave. But if you sound more like a consultative selling person versus a product selling person, you're going to decrease emails being deleted unread. You're going to get more of an ear when you're leaving a voicemail message, when you do end up getting on the phone with them. So if we can sound more like a business person, then we're going to stand out from all those different salespeople. Consultative selling is a whole subject in itself. Here's a webinar that we did on how to be a consultative salesperson. So the prospect, we talked about, if we are fortunate enough to get them on the phone, it's very likely that they're not going to be in buying mode. So, an example of this, every business purchases, let's say, accounting services and uses an accounting firm or a CPA. Well, think about a person trying to sell that service. Yes, I use an accounting firm, and that might change from time to time, but when I receive your email or your call, I am not in buying mode looking to change. It's very likely I'm not looking to change firms. So what I would tell you is that instead of trying to sell the product, even knowing we were just talking about don't be a product pusher, but there are times where you might end up in a conversation where you are actually trying to worry about selling the product. And what I would say to you is if you look at the different steps in a typical sales process, you can very easily fall into trying to sell the product in that first conversation, which would be the first initial contact, which could be your email or your voicemail or your phone if you get them on the phone. And so don't try to sell the product in that first stage because they're not in buying mode. So if I call you up and I'm trying to sell you accounting services and you're not in buying mode to purchase accounting services, then you arrive at a no a lot easier and quicker. No, I'm not looking at buying accounting services. So instead of selling the product, sell the conversation. Right here it says sell the meeting, but actually sell the conversation. So yes, you might not be buying, but that doesn't mean that you're not interested in having a conversation around accounting services, around challenges that you might have with your existing firm, around improvements that you need to make around your reporting or your accounting. Focus on setting the appointment, scheduling the meeting versus selling the product. And another thing, again, we're dealing with the challenge here that the prospect's not in buying mode when we do connect with them. And if you do connect with them, and they're not in buying mode, and you have that product selling mentality, you're likely to hear objections like this: I'm not interested. We do not have budget right now. We're not looking at making any changes right now. We already used somebody for that. Call me back in X months. So if you're selling the product, you don't really have a response for this. If they don't have budget and I want to sell the product, then that's a significant reason for us not to meet. Because why would I meet with you if you can't buy what I sell? But if I'm trying to have just start the conversation, the fact that you don't have budget is irrelevant. Okay, well, I'm not trying to sign you up for anything. I want to have I'm looking to have an introductory conversation, learn a little bit about you, share with you a little bit how we helped businesses like yours, and it'll be a brief conversation, and we won't have the expectation that you're going to buy anything. But maybe then when your budget opens up or when you're in your next year planning, you can know how we can fit into your plans or what we could offer. That way, when your budget does open up, we can come back to the table and you can keep us in mind. So from our standpoint, it would be very productive. So that's a response that you could give to that objection if you're not selling the product but you're selling the meeting. So you be prepared for these objections, and we do have information for you to work on your objection handling. It's a whole subject in itself. So here's a webinar on how to deal with objections. Check that out, and it'll go through those objections that I just shared with you, which will help you with the prospect not being in buying mode and maybe giving you some objections. We talked about your prospects get a lot of calls from salespeople and that they're extremely busy, and that makes their guard at a medium level. So again, and this is where some of the tips are, you'll see them twice because they impact in different ways, but this is where we'll, again, emphasize the point to not sound like a salesperson. When you sound like a salesperson, that their guardedness will go up. So they answer your call and you start talking about your product, you start talking about your company, they think, oh geez, why did I answer this call? Another salesperson trying to talk me into something, and they're going to start to give you objections, try to get off the phone with you. And it's instances like that when you do that, then you end up getting shut down, hung up on, whatever. Then you start to feel like cold calling does not work. And that's where you might start to believe in those debates that cold calling is dead. But if you decrease how much you sound like a salesperson, you can decrease the guard going up, and then that can improve your ability to establish conversations and whatnot. So one way to decrease the guardedness going up is what we just talked about there, being more of a consultative salesperson versus a product selling will help there. Here are a couple other things though. One thing, and I don't have enough time to get into this in more detail, so I don't know if this will really resonate or make sense to you, but in my inside sales operations, and I used to have a cold calling outsourcing business, so we did cold calling for other companies. I had a whole team of people, and we always asked this question at the beginning of every call, and it's to confirm availability, but it's also a pattern interrupt. And so I don't know if you know what the term pattern interrupt is. You can look it up, but it's a psychological tactic and this question actually serves as that, which is to ask, have I caught you in the middle of anything? And so this is a very different question than most salespeople ask. Most salespeople ask, how are you doing today? So as soon as you ask, how are you doing today, you start to trigger that, oh, this sounds like a salesperson trying to sell to me. And so if you change that to, have I caught you in the middle of anything, you're actually triggering a pattern interrupt. You're confirming availability. It sounds very familiar. And so I've listened to hundreds, maybe more calls where my salespeople always ask this question, and it's amazing how people decrease their guardedness, or for sure they don't trigger more guardedness when you ask this question at the beginning of a call. The other subtle tactic is that right after you confirm availability, or actually it's right after you deliver your value statement, is to deliver a soft disqualifier, soft takeaway, which is to say something. So an example of this might be where if I use my value statement, I might say something like, I help inside sales managers to shorten the amount of time it takes to train new reps. And then now I'm going to use the soft takeaway, soft disqualify. But you know what? I don't know if you're a good fit for what we do. So that's an example of like a push-pull. It's a disqualify. So and to do that at the beginning of a call will decrease someone's guardedness. So you're doing the exact opposite of what typical salespeople do. Product pushing salespeople will say, you need this, you want this, you got to take a look at this. A consultative salesperson might question whether or not they fit well. So there's actually a full webinar on doing a takeaway, and so check that out. Here's a link, and I can't get into that in more detail, but those are some things to help with that particular challenge of people being guardedness, some small changes that you can make. So because of some of these other challenges, we know that prospects don't answer their phone a whole lot. Either they're away from their desk, and again, so using some sort of call cadence, a level of persistence, don't assume they're not interested because they're not asking. A lot of touches will help with that. And the last challenge is that prospects put gatekeepers in your way. And this is a fact, right? So, and this is a result of some of these other challenges. Prospects get so many calls from salespeople that they put someone else to deal with that. And that person is a gatekeeper, and that person has the objective of getting rid of you. And so the thing is that if you stop to think about how much time you might spend dealing with gatekeepers, I don't know. I mean, I've just done some estimates, but I think that it could be where you spend half your phone prospecting time dealing with gatekeepers. So whether that's if you spend 2 hours a day dealing phone prospecting, 10 hours a week, 2 hours a week, whatever it is, you could assume that half that time is going to be having your phone calls answered by gatekeepers. So that is what it is. Like I said, this is a challenge. There's nothing we can do to change that. I mean, you can say, one thing that you can do is you can try to get direct phone numbers proactively instead of main switchboard numbers. So that could help you to decrease that challenge technically. But even when you have direct dials for decision makers, a lot of times those phones get routed to administrative assistants, which serve as a gatekeeper. So the point is that this is a challenge that stands in your way, and because it's such a large percentage, it can be beneficial and helpful for you to improve your ability to decrease and deal with this challenge. And there are some things that you can do to make this less difficult. I mean, let's face it, some gatekeepers are just difficult, and there's nothing you can do to get past them. But instead of just trying to power your way through or improvise and do something different every time a gatekeeper answers, there is some logic that you can apply that can improve your ability over a large number of calls to improve the rate of them letting you in or giving you information or passing you through. I can't go into full explanation on how to deal with gatekeepers, but I just want to give a few tips here. The first one is to start with understanding the gatekeeper. And the key thing here is that the gatekeeper in most cases has been given the objective to keep a salesperson out. Just like you have the objective of getting to the decision maker and getting the decision maker on the phone so that you can reach your targets of either setting appointments or selling deals, the gatekeeper has the objective of keeping salespeople out. And there's many instances where if they let you in, they're actually going to get in trouble. So, it's sort of like, just like you might get in trouble formally or informally if you can't get past gatekeepers, they could get in trouble if you do. So you kind of have this, you're at odds, and you have different objectives and different interests. So that is what it is. So that's the first thing that you should kind of be aware of when you're dealing with these people when they're being difficult. And there's some things that you can do there to build a relationship and to work around them. I'll point you to more information on that, but one thing that you could do is you should prepare for gatekeeper objections. So just a quick example, the most common gatekeeper objection is, what is this call in regards to? So they're going to ask that, just looking for the clear flag that you're a salesperson. As soon as they know you're a salesperson, then they'll know to shut you down with, we're not interested. Let me put you into a supplier or vendor voicemail box. Just send me your information. So you should be able to deal with that objection, and we actually provide a way to deal with that. And the tip we provide is to say your value statement. So because that it's just sort of like a curveball, and the gatekeeper doesn't know what to do with that. So if a gatekeeper says to me, what's this call in regards to? Oh, well, the reason why I'm reaching out is I help sales managers to decrease their rate of sales staff turnover. And I just sit there. And the gatekeeper doesn't know what to do with that. It's sort of like a robot who is their computer code has a glitch, and they start not knowing what to do and bouncing in place. That's what your gatekeeper will do, because they won't be able to know, because it doesn't give them the flag of I'm a salesperson. You sound like a consultant or an advisor, right? So they might not pass you through and say, oh, you do, well, let me connect you with Jimmy, but they're not going to have that instant response of, oh, we're not interested. And it's hard to say we're not interested if you say a value point, because it's sort of like saying, hey, I help people to make more money. Oh, I'm not interested in making more money. Even knowing you're not interested in taking the call, it doesn't make sense for you to say you're not interested in that particular point. Anyways, so that's just a glimpse of what you can do with objection handling. You treat the gatekeeper like a prospect if they start blocking you out, and you can do that by, typically we want you to ask your prospect questions in your consultative selling approach. So if the gatekeeper blocks you out, well, start asking your gatekeeper some of your probing questions. This can do a few things. One is, depending on the gatekeeper, they may have a lot of really valuable information. So why not, if they're not going to pass you through, get some information out of them. And also, if they don't have any information or answers to your questions, that could help you to maybe find a reason for them to let you in, or help you to explain why it makes sense for you to talk to the person you're trying to reach. Now, we do have a full webinar on how to get around gatekeepers, and you can get to that here. So be sure to check that out. So that's pretty much it. I just want to sort of wrap up with a few points about how we help you, or what we have to offer in more detail. And at the end of the day, what we provide as SalesScripter is we provide a solution called the Smart Sales System. And so SMART actually stands for Sales Messaging and Response Tactics. So we're real big on teaching you what to say and how to respond in certain situations, and it's all about tactics. So I've been through a lot of sales training. I follow a lot of sales training gurus on Twitter and online, and a lot of the stuff out there is fluff. Like I kind of gave you an example before of a sales trainer saying you got to sleep when you got to work when your competition's sleeping. That's the key to you being successful. Okay, well, when I'm working when my prospect's sleeping, what am I doing? So like I said, our training doesn't really try to pump you up and get you motivated. Our training tells you exactly what to do. When you're in this situation, say this. To figure out who to call, do this. So we're all about the tactics. And just a little bit of background. My experience was working for very established technology companies that always taught me about the product and then pushed me to go sell, and they never taught me what to say and ask. And so it always became a passion of mine to figure out, create tools for myself that would remind me what questions I need to ask in what situations. So all of the type of stuff that I'm sharing with you here today, in fact, I've redirected you back to a bunch of different webinars. That's actually part of our sales methodology, which is one leg of a three-legged stool that makes up the Smart Sales System. So our methodology, you can actually access it on YouTube. This is actually a screenshot from YouTube of our Smart Sales System training, which is actually something like 25 or so webinars, which is all the webinars I've directed you to in this presentation are on this playlist on YouTube. So actually, if you grab this playlist, you'll have a central place where you can access all of those different modules. You can access a lot of this methodology also through our ebooks If you haven't downloaded those, you can get those off of our website. And then I have a physical book that you can buy on Amazon called The Cold Calling Equation, which has a lot of this information as well. One of the benefits to buying the book versus the free ebooks is that you could get it in Kindle version, but you can also get it in a paperback book. And the nice thing about that is that you can have something on your desk that you can stick tabs into where you can flip to sections. And there's chapters on a lot of these topics I'm sharing with you here today. There's a chapter on objections. There's a chapter on gatekeepers. There's a chapter on voicemail messages. So you don't have to read the book from page 1 to 230. You can read the chapter that you need help with, and you can flag those and flip to those when you're working. And if you're in a managerial role and you like this methodology and you want to expose your team to some of this, well, then the book is $15. I mean, you're definitely going to get your return on investment if you buy a copy of the book for each salesperson and put it on their desk, and especially if you want them to watch some of our training videos, put those together, and that's a good way to roll out some of this stuff. Again, our methodology is delivered through recorded training videos. We also provide the same stuff as live training, either virtually or in person, and we can customize some of this content to actually be your content as well. So like when we're talking about value points, we're talking about your value, pain points, we're talking about the pain points that your product fixes and whatnot. Now that's the sales methodology, and actually a lot of what I just shared with you in the methodology you can access for free. Like you can access our full methodology on YouTube for free, and the reason why is because our hope is that if you watch all of our videos and you think it's all great stuff, you should probably check out our software platform, which is called SalesScripter, and that's where you're going to get it's a place for you to apply and take advantage of that full methodology, because like the methodology is going to teach you how to build your pitch and how to build call scripts and what to say on voicemail messages. Well, the software is going to provide you with a sales pitch builder that's going to take you through building your pitch. And once you do that, you're going to have a library of call scripts and voicemail scripts and email templates. It also has CRM functionality that I showed a little bit to you here today. And it also provides email automation for all those email templates that it creates. The last leg of the three-legged stool is professional services. So we provide sales consulting. So we'll actually help you to build your pitch, and we can actually do that inside of the software and take you through and help you to figure out what your value proposition is, what the pain points are that you help to fix, what questions you should be asking, or some clients want us to do that outside of the software, so we can do that as well. We provide sales coaching one-on-one to frontline salespeople, so working with people on a recurring basis and help them to overcome challenges, map out action plans and progress tracking. And so the thing behind the SMART sales system, is that, again, SMART stands for sales messaging and response tactics. And so we're going to focus on creating clarity for you for what to say and do. And when we help you or your team to do this, we're going to help you to be smart. If you know what to say and ask and what to do, you're going to be smart. And by asking good questions, you're going to appear smart to your customer, meaning you might be a little clueless, like in terms of what your product, how it really works. But if you ask really thought-provoking questions for a salesperson, your prospect is going to think this person really knows what they're doing. This is a very consultative person, and they're going to be impressed with you. They're going to think you're smart. By you appearing smart, you're going to make a better impression with your prospects, and that could be the difference. That might make them feel more comfortable around you, might allow them to take more meetings with you, might make them to have more rapport with you. And because you're asking good questions, you're going to get more information. And by having more information, this is going to make you smart. And because you're smart, you're going to make better decisions regarding who you should call and which prospects you should walk away from. And by making good decisions, you're going to be able to use your time wiser, because you only have 40 to 50 hours in a week. You can't go out and buy more hours. So by being smart, you're going to be able to get the most out of your time by spending it with the good prospects and walking away from the bad. And by being smart, you're basically going to sell more, because you're going to be able to make a better impression. You're going to get more information. You're going to be working with the right prospects. You're going to make good decisions, and you're going to sell more. And because you're selling more and you're more successful at your job is going to be less stressful, and you're going to have more fun. So I mean, at the end of the day, do you want to be smart or not? And that's what we will help you to do. We're going to help you, or we're going to help your salespeople to be smart, and that's going to lead to them being more successful and selling more. So the nice thing about what we do is you can really get going with a little investment. So you can actually get going with using our stuff for free, and that's with our YouTube videos and our ebooks. But if you want to go to the next step, our software product is $49 a month, and we actually discount that if you do an annual subscription. So it's a pretty big discount. It's a 40% discount if you purchase for the year. And part of the reason why is because, well, due to time, I won't explain the reason why, but you can just sign up for 1 month to test it out. We also have a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. So if you're unhappy for any reason, let us know, and if it's in 30 days, we'll give you a refund of your money, whether that's the $49 or the annual subscription. And our sales training, again, is at no cost. Now, one thing that some of our customers purchase is a service we call a Scripter walkthrough, which is a 2-hour engagement where I personally will go through our software with you and help you to build your sales pitch. And because the software is a very efficient process, within 2 hours, we're going to be able to build your entire sales pitch, because the software is going to basically interview you, and when I'll help you to answer each question, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to outline the benefits you offer, the pain points you fix, the questions you should be asking, and then the software is going to use all your answers to create a library of documents, and we're going to achieve that in only 2 hours. So that is a $200. There is a $200 fee with that service, but if you were to purchase 1 month for $49 and the walkthrough for $250, basically, you're going to basically get an awesome sales pitch, a full library of scripts, meaning call scripts and email templates and voicemail scripts. And you can do our software month to month. So you could cancel. You could download all the documents and cancel there. And so you're going to get all of that for $250. And that's a pretty good value. I mean, you're going to get more than $250 worth. And the reason why is, the thing is that if you really love all that stuff, you probably want to keep using our software beyond that. So especially if you use the CRM and the email automation. So it would be more than $250 if you continue to use the software beyond that. But then I would recommend you do the annual subscription if that's the case, which will bring your cost down in half almost. So, but the point is that you can take a lot of small steps, and for what you get, it's not a lot of money, especially if it transforms every call that you make, every email that you make, and every email that you send, every voicemail message that you leave, and everything that you do all day long can be transformed for an investment of $250. And what would that mean to you from a sales perspective at the end of the, your in terms of monthly commissions? So, anyways, that's pretty much it. And here's my contact info. If you have any questions, feel free to email me directly. You can follow us on Twitter. And let me see if there are any questions.